This is the lecture for John Danaher's The Threat of Algocracy, uh, Reality, Resistance, and Accommodation. So the first topic is legitimacy, and we're talking about legitimacy in this lecture because this is going to be a very important concept for this whole unit on algorithmic governance. And he describes legitimacy as the property that coercive public decision-making processes must possess if they are to rightfully exercise the requisite authority over our lives. There are many different accounts of what it is that makes a decision-making procedure legitimate. There are broadly three schools of thought, and then he goes into these. And so this is just to talk a bit more about this because this is going to be such an important topic, not just with this reading, but with the next three readings too. And so uh, the property that coercive public decision-making processes must possess if they're to rightfully exercise the requisite authority over our lives. So think about the way that governments function. Governments are coercive in the sense that if you don't do what the government wants you to do, they will coerce you. So they'll put you in jail or they'll take your money or things like this. So the government is coercive in ways that maybe ideally other things are not. So if a person threatens to lock you up or take your money or something like that, they're doing something illegal. Like that's not usually allowed. We don't usually allow people to exercise coercive power over each other. There are exceptions. So we let parents exercise coercive power over their children. So if a child's about to run into the street and the parent sort of picks up the child and puts them down, doesn't let them move or whatever, that's sort of coercing the child. That's not allowing the child to do what they want to do. But, there's nothing wrong with that. The parent is doing it for the good of the child. But broadly speaking, coercive power is kind of restricted to the government and agents of the government. And so there's this question, what makes that legitimate? What authorizes that sort of thing? What makes it the case that they rightfully exercise the requisite authority over our lives? So the thought is, well, whatever it is that makes this okay, if in fact anything makes this okay, that is legitimacy. So a government is legitimate if, when it exercises its coercive authority, it doesn't do anything wrong. So it's doing something rightful. And of course, lots of governments exercise coercive authority in ways that we don't think are rightful. So if the government is rounding people up who belong to a certain religion and putting them in camps and doing stuff like this, then it's doing something that's morally wrong, something that's objectionable, and so the government is illegitimate. It's not acting legitimately when it does this thing. So legitimacy is the property that government actions have when they are rightful. When they are not rightful, they are illegitimate. And so there's this question, what makes something legitimate? What makes a government or what makes a public decision-making process that the government engages in legitimate? What is it to be legitimate? We get kind of three answers in Danaher. He says the pure instrumentalists think that a procedure gains legitimacy solely in virtue of its consequences. Procedures are instruments that have normative aims, reducing crime, increasing well-being, etc. And the better they are at achieving those aims, the more legitimate they are. So, if the government does something, if it throws some people in jail or whatever, what would make that legitimate? Well, if it has good results, if it reduces crime or increases well-being or something, then it's legitimate. And if it has bad results, then it's not legitimate. And then, contrary-wise, the pure proceduralists think that it's difficult to know what the ideal outcome is in advance. Hence, they tend to emphasize the need for our procedures to exhibit certain outcome-independent virtues. For example, they might argue that our procedures should create ideal speech situations, allowing for those who are affected by them to comprehend what's going on and contribute to the decision-making process. So the thought is something is legitimate, not in terms of its outcomes, what it achieves or whatever, but if it was brought about in a certain sort of way, in a legitimate kind of way. So if everybody got to put their input in it and they sort of got to freely understand what's going on, and they sort of understood and contributed to the government, then the government could be legitimate, not based on what its results are, but the process that it went through. Then he says you can also have like a mixed view, like both of these things matter. So this is kind of an introduction to legitimacy. Like I said, this is going to be a big topic throughout the whole unit, so it'll keep coming up, but it's useful to start thinking about it now. The second and third topics are epistocracy and epistemic enhancement. And I'm talking about epistocracy because it's pretty relevant for this paper and maybe for the whole unit. And then epistemic enhancement just because we happen to be talking about like epistemic stuff, just so we get a refresher on that word. So epistocracy comes up on 250, 251. It's this worry about legitimacy, and you can read more about the argument here, but the basic worry is, should government be run by the smartest people? Should we put the people in charge of the government who know as much as anybody can know about how things work? I think you can hear a cat in the background. So, well, the cat doesn't want to be on camera, but epistocracy basically says we should put like the smartest people in charge, the most knowledgeable people in charge. And there's the question: is that like is a government run by epistocrats, the smartest people? Is that a legitimate government or is that not a legitimate government? And in fact, we have here an argument for why it's not a legitimate government. And so this is just to say, like, the word epistocracy comes from episteme, and that just means like knowledge. And so the idea of an epistocracy is that you put the people with the most knowledge in charge. And so that's why it's called epistocracy. And then similarly, episteme comes up in this topic of epistemic enhancement, which he talks about on 260 to 261. When you get there, you'll understand what he means by this. But just to introduce the topic, so you understand why it's called epistemic enhancement. Enhancing somebody epistemically makes them better at like knowing things. It sort of makes them smarter with respect to figuring stuff out. So if you undergo epistemic enhancement, you'll be better at science and math and philosophy and stuff like that. It just makes you a better knower, so to speak. And so that's just what all this like epistemic, epistocracy, what those words mean in this context.